She rolled her eyes as I bowed my head to pray, at my own dinner table. In front of my family. In my home. That's when I realized, it wasn't just about disrespect. It was about erasure. And I wasn't going to let that happen, not quietly, not this time. You ever sit in a room full of people you raised, and suddenly feel like a stranger in your own skin? I was standing at the head of the table, both hands gently resting on the back of my chair, saying grace like I always had before family meals. My voice was steady, warm, filled with gratitude for the food, the company, and the health we'd all been granted. It was my way of holding us together, something I'd done for 40 years. But this time, something shifted. My granddaughter-in-law, Claire, didn't even bow her head. She stared right at me, bored, impatient, and then rolled her eyes with a smug half-smile, as if my prayer was some tired old bedtime story. I felt the ripple of discomfort across the table, but no one said a word. Not even my grandson Eric, who used to ask me to say 2 prayers, one before dinner and one before bed when he was little. I sat down, my fork trembling in my hand. The roast chicken I'd spent hours basting felt like ash in my mouth. Conversations picked up again, awkwardly at first, but I was still frozen in that single moment, her expression, that disrespect, like I was some outdated relic being humored in my own home. After everyone left, I stood in the kitchen, my hands in the sink long after the dishes were clean, staring out the window into the dark. The quiet used to comfort me. Now it just echoed with everything that went unsaid. I thought I had raised them better. I thought faith meant something to them, not just my faith in God, but my faith in them. Claire had only been part of this family for a couple years, and she'd already rearranged the furniture in more ways than one. Eric worshipped the ground she walked on, called her modern, progressive, sharp. And maybe she was all those things. But lately, she treated me like I was the opposite of that. A burden. An embarrassment. She once joked about my cross necklace, calling it vintage. I told her it wasn't jewelry, it was a gift from my late husband, Paul. He'd worn it during our wedding ceremony, and I'd had it made into a pendant after he passed. She just sipped her wine and said, "That's sweet," like I was telling a bedtime story again. That night after the dinner, I sat on my bed and opened the wooden box that held Paul's letters. His handwriting, always neat, always thoughtful, smiled up at me in blue ink. "Hold your ground, Evelyn. The world's louder now, but the truth still whispers." I held the letter to my chest and took a breath so deep it shook my ribs. My name is Evelyn, and I've always been quiet. Gentle. But don't mistake quiet for weak. 2 weeks later, Eric and Claire announced they were getting married, again. This time, a full church ceremony and reception, since their courthouse elopement wasn't aesthetic enough. Claire wanted everything perfect, Instagram-worthy. Like a cathedral wedding but modern, she said at dinner, laughing. We found the perfect place. An old church on the east side. Historic, but not too religious. I froze mid-bite. The church she meant? That was my childhood church. The one where I was baptized. Where Paul and I were married. Where we used to sing hymns as sunlight poured through the stained glass like it was heaven cracking open. They picked that place for their wedding, and didn't even ask me. Didn't even consider I might have memories there. Claire kept talking about cleaning up the altar area for photo space, and I felt a chill run through me. Eric said, "I know it's special to you, Grandma, but we're just renting it. It's more about the aesthetic." I smiled politely. I didn't say a word that night. Not when they left. Not even when I shut the door behind them and locked it, my hand resting on the brass knob like I was holding back a storm. But in my head, something was stirring. A quiet, measured resolve. You see, there's something they don't know about me. When Paul died, he left behind more than love letters and stories. He left behind a string of smart investments. Real estate. Antique shops. Land. And over the years, I managed them myself. I never told the kids how much. I wanted them to grow on their own. But now, I had a reason. I pulled out the files the next morning, dusted off the old laptop, and made a few calls. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, not exactly. But I knew that church had been struggling financially for years. I wanted to see its books. A week later, I had lunch with the church board president, Harold, a man I'd known since we were both 6 years old. He still had the same lopsided grin and nervous way of stirring his iced tea. "They're thinking of selling," he said softly. eyes heavy with guilt. Attendance is down. The building needs repairs. It's a lot. I looked out the window at the bell tower. Faded white paint. Cracks in the stone. Still beautiful. Still holy. What if, I said slowly, someone bought it who cared about it? Harold raised an eyebrow. You? I nodded. And then I signed the first offer right there, quietly, strategically, under a private LLC that no one would trace back to me. Not yet. Claire wanted the church for photos. I was about to give her something unforgettable. But not what she expected. You know what people forget? That the quiet ones, those of us who pray before meals, who hold our tongues, who smile instead of shout, we're also the ones who wait. We don't forget. We don't forgive as easily as they assume. And we plan. The day my offer was accepted for the old St. Mary's Church, I didn't throw a celebration. I didn't tell a soul. I simply walked inside those wooden doors with a set of keys in my hand and let the silence wrap around me like a hymn I'd known since childhood. The pews were dusty. The altar worn down from time and weather. But the stained glass still held light. I stood alone in the center aisle, right where Paul and I once stood, hand in hand, 60 years ago. I whispered his name, and I swear I felt a breeze move through the chapel though no windows were open. Then I remembered Claire's voice, high and proud, saying, "We're just using it for the vibe. It's not like we believe in that stuff." That stuff was my whole life. I sat in the first pew and looked up. They didn't even ask me if it would be okay to use this church. I didn't need to be asked anymore. Because I owned it now. The renovation crew started the next morning. Not full restoration, I didn't want to erase the history. Just repairs. Cleaning. Quiet respect. I met with every contractor personally, walking through the chapel with my notebook and my low-heeled orthopedic shoes clicking softly against the tile floor. I asked them not to change anything significant. Just preserve what made it holy. One of the workers, a younger man with a beard and paint-streaked jeans, asked me why I was fixing it up if I wasn't going to turn it into an event space or a gallery. I smiled. Because it already has a purpose. Some people just forgot what that was. A few days later, Claire called me. I nearly didn't answer. But I wanted to hear her voice. "Hi Evelyn," she chirped, sugar in her tone. "Just checking to see if you know anyone on the church board. We haven't heard back from them and our wedding date's coming up fast." I let a beat of silence stretch. "Oh? You're planning to get married at St. Mary's?" "Yes. Well, we were. But it's been weird, emails bouncing, voicemail full, no returned calls. Can you believe it?" I could. Because I directed Harold and the board to redirect all inquiries to my new manager, a lovely older woman named Ruth who knew exactly what kind of bookings I wouldn't allow. "Let me ask around," I said simply. "I'll see what I can find out." Claire sighed with relief. "You're a lifesaver. We need that church, Evelyn. It's going to be iconic." Iconic. She meant for Instagram. Later that night, I baked a fresh peach cobbler and took it to Ruth's apartment. We sat in her kitchen sipping mint tea while I explained exactly who Claire was. "And you're certain," Ruth asked gently, "that you want to decline her event request?" "I'm certain," I said without blinking. "But I don't want her to know it's me. Not yet." Ruth nodded, lips pursed. "I'll take care of it." The next few days were quiet, until Eric showed up on my doorstep. He looked tired. Annoyed. Like someone had disrupted his calendar. "Claire's freaking out," he said without so much as a hello. "The church said they're no longer booking weddings. That can't be right." I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe. Maybe they're taking a break for restoration. He blinked. "What?" "Old buildings need care," I said. "Especially sacred ones." "Yeah, but Claire already planned everything. Decorations, photographer, guests." "She should have secured the space first," I said flatly. He frowned. "Are you mad about something?" "Should I be?" I replied, not breaking eye contact. His jaw clenched. "I told her it wasn't personal. But she said you were being old-fashioned again, and maybe that's why they're not responding." I smiled. "So the church isn't aesthetic enough anymore?" Eric gave a weak laugh. "Look, can you talk to someone? Pull some strings." I tilted my head. You mean like you did? When you planned a wedding in the church where I married your grandfather and didn't say a word. He blinked. For once, no words came. I didn't invite him in. That night, I walked through the church again, running my fingers across the worn wooden pews, thinking of every moment I had ever prayed for my family. For Eric. For the strength to hold my tongue, even when my voice was shaking. But now, my voice was back. And it had weight. The next morning, Ruth emailed Claire a formal rejection letter, polite, professional, with a note that the church was undergoing spiritual restoration and not accepting secular wedding bookings at this time. Claire called me within minutes. Can you believe this? She snapped. They're saying we can't have our wedding there because it's not religious? That's discrimination. Is it? I said quietly. Yes. It's just a building. No, I replied. It's not. She paused. Did you have something to do with this? I let the silence speak. She hung up. Over the next week, I saw posts on social media of her looking at alternative venues, modern rooftops, garden estates. Each caption more passive-aggressive than the last. None of them matched the vision she'd built around St. Mary's. I didn't care. You roll your eyes at a prayer? You lose access to the blessing. A few days before the original wedding date, I lit a candle at the altar and placed Paul's photograph beside it. The chapel was empty, peaceful. Sunlight filtered through the rose window, casting golden-pink halos across the floor. I sat in the front pew and read from the same Bible Paul and I used on our wedding day. And then I locked the doors and walked home. No one ever told me I was allowed to reclaim what mattered. But now they'd learn. You don't mock a legacy. You don't disrespect faith. And you never forget who owns the keys. People say faith is quiet. And maybe it is, on most days. But sometimes faith shows up in a tailored blouse, straightens her spine, and says, not this time. I've always been the quiet one. The one who forgives without a fuss. The one who brings banana bread to those who mock her, and who folds her hands when the laughter gets loud. But there's a limit. And Claire found mine when she made a spectacle out of something I hold sacred. So when she called again, this time sobbing, not snapping, I knew the tables had turned. Please, Evelyn, Claire said, her voice thick with panic. We've tried everything. No one else is available on such short notice, and the guests already have their flights booked. Can you do something? Anything. I pictured her sitting in her kitchen, surrounded by empty coffee cups and a bridal binder full of wasted plans. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. But I also didn't lie. I'm not sure there's anything I can do, dear, I said softly. Sometimes doors close for a reason. And this one? I owned the lock. Later that evening, I went back to the church. It had become a habit, walking the aisles after sundown, straightening hymnals, dusting the candle stands. The scent of old wood and wax calmed me. It felt like breathing again. I ran my hand across the pew where Paul used to sit during choir rehearsals. He couldn't sing worth a lick, but he did it anyway. Off-key and proud. He used to wink at me across the aisle, even 50 years into our marriage. He never rolled his eyes when I prayed. He joined me. Now I prayed alone, but I wasn't lonely. Not anymore. The following Sunday, I arrived early and placed new flowers at the altar. Sunlight poured in through the rose window. The air was still. Then I heard footsteps behind me, rushed, uneven, irritated. I turned to find Claire standing there in a sleeveless cream top, high-waisted slacks, and designer heels that clicked furiously on the stone floor. What are you trying to prove? She snapped, arms crossed. I didn't expect visitors, I said calmly. Especially not ones who don't believe in this stuff. Her lips pressed into a line. You bought this place just to spite me. No, I said. I bought it because it was about to be gutted for condos. She scoffed. And you just happened to refuse my wedding? I walked past her, adjusting a vase that didn't need adjusting. I'm not refusing you, I said over my shoulder. The church is. You made it clear you don't believe in what this space means. Why pretend otherwise on your wedding day? Claire laughed bitterly. Do you hear yourself? This is a business now. You own it. It's just a shell. I turned slowly and faced her. It's not a shell to me. Or to the people who used to fill these pews? Or to the ones who still do? Her mouth opened, but no sound came. I stepped closer. You want a venue, Claire? Not a church. You want a photo backdrop. I want something sacred. She blinked, and for the first time, I saw something other than pride in her eyes. I saw shame. That night, I pulled out a dusty box from the back of my hall closet. Inside were photographs of Paul and me on our wedding day, him in his borrowed suit, me in a dress I sewed myself, the church behind us glowing like something out of heaven. No filters. No hired florist. Just love. And respect. I placed one of the photos on my nightstand. Let them chase the perfect wedding. I already had the perfect marriage. A few days later, I got a knock at the door. Not a call. Not a text. A knock. When I opened it, Eric stood there. Hands in his pockets. Eyes unsure. I figured you wouldn't answer if I called, he said. You figured right. He glanced down, then back up at me. I didn't come to argue. I came to apologize. That was new. I stepped aside and let him in. He sat on the couch, nervously smoothing his jeans, while I took my time pouring tea. When I finally joined him, he cleared his throat. Claire was out of line. I should have said something earlier. I sipped. Waited. She doesn't understand what this place means to you. Or to anyone who grew up believing in something bigger than themselves. It's not how she was raised. Who raised her? I asked quietly. His eyes dropped again. Me. And who raised you? He looked up. You. We sat in silence for a while. Finally, he asked, do you think there's any way you'd let us still have the wedding here? If it were different. I tilted my head. Define different. We talked. Claire said she's willing to include a real service. A pastor. Real vows. Real prayer. I think she's beginning to understand this isn't just a building. I didn't answer immediately. I stared into my cup, watching the steam rise like incense. I'll think about it, I said. But the next morning, I called Ruth. I'm not ready to give it back, I said. Ruth didn't ask why. Because she already knew. The church remained closed to weddings. Not just Claire's. All of them. Instead, I opened it to something else, community. We hosted prayer circles. Soup kitchens. Grief groups. The pews began to fill again, not with influencers or brides, but with people who needed peace more than they needed pictures. One afternoon, I was arranging hymnals when a little girl skipped up to me and said, "My mom says you saved this church." I smiled. No, sweet girl. This church saved me. Claire moved the wedding to some glass building downtown. It looked like a shopping mall. Pictures popped up on social media, her in a feathered gown, surrounded by champagne flutes and string lights. No cross. No prayer. Just flash. And it was fine. But it wasn't sacred. A month later, Eric stopped by again. This time, he brought a box. Photos, he said. Of Dad. Of your wedding. I found them in storage. Thought you'd want them. I took the box from his hands and opened the lid. There we were, Paul and I, young and glowing, surrounded by candlelight and family. One picture showed me kneeling at the altar. I remember that day, I said softly. I prayed for your future. He sat beside me. I'm sorry I forgot where I came from. You didn't forget, I said. You just stopped visiting. That night, I placed a new frame on the altar. Not a photo of Claire's wedding, but one of mine. A reminder that reverence is not for sale. And some things can't be rolled away with an eye. Some stories reach their loudest moment in complete silence. And on a gray Thursday morning, silence says more than Claire ever could. It starts with a letter. A real one, stamped and folded, not typed. Addressed in looping handwriting I instantly recognize. My name, full and proper, Evelyn Grace Hollis. No Grams, no Evie. She used my full name like it was a confession. I open it slowly, half expecting venom. But it's not angry. It's not even defensive. It's an invitation. Not to the wedding. To the rehearsal. My hands freeze. Claire wrote. It would mean something to me, if you'd be there. Even if we're not using your church. My church. I set the letter down. That phrase sits in my chest like a stone. Your church. Even Claire, with all her protest and pride, had said it out loud. She knew now. It wasn't just a building. It was mine. Not because I bought it, but because I believed in it when no one else did. The next day, I walk into the sanctuary with a box of silk flowers. Not for her wedding. Not for show. For Sunday. As I arrange them along the front railing, I hear footsteps again. This time slow, tentative. I don't turn around. I didn't expect you to come, I say, still adjusting the petals. Claire's voice floats in like wind through stained glass. I wasn't going to. But I don't know. I keep hearing your voice in my head. That day. I finally face her. She's wearing jeans, a soft brown coat, no makeup. Her hair's pulled back in a messy bun, and for once, there's no camera slung over her shoulder. Just her. Quiet. Still. I was awful, she says. I've seen worse, I answer flatly. I mocked something sacred. And it didn't even register until I saw how you looked at me. Like you didn't even know who I was. I didn't, I reply. Claire nods. Doesn't argue. I still don't, I add. But I'd like to. We sit in the front pew together. She tells me things I never knew. About her own upbringing. About how her mother always treated church as a chore. How she never felt peace sitting in one, just pressure. And I took that out on you, she admits. Because you looked like you meant it. Like it comforted you. And I couldn't understand why. I touch the cross pendant at my neck. I never asked you to understand, I say. I just asked you not to laugh. She swallows hard. I know. She pulls out a wrinkled card from her coat pocket and hands it to me. Another invitation. But this time, it's not to the rehearsal. It's the actual wedding. I blink at the words, ceremony to be held at First Stone Chapel. My church. My chest tightens. But I thought? She nods quickly. We cancelled the downtown venue. Eric and I agreed we were trying too hard to impress people who don't matter. And what changed? You, she says. You reminded me there's a difference between pretty and meaningful. I don't respond right away. My throat's too tight. So I nod. And I let her hug me. Not tight. Not long. But enough. The week before the wedding, the church transforms, but not in a flashy way. No neon lights. No gold streamers. Claire brings soft ivory ribbons and sets a few on each pew. I provide the lace cloth for the altar. Ruth donates fresh white roses. The old pianist comes back to rehearse a version of Come Thou Fount that makes me cry in secret. Eric stops by on the second night of decorating. He doesn't say much. Just hands me a worn photo of Paul and me from our wedding day. I thought it deserved a place up front, he says. And I know what he means. The day of the wedding arrives in a hush. The sky's a soft gray, clouds brushing low like the world itself is holding its breath. I wear my nicest cream blouse, a pleated navy skirt, and a long silver pendant Paul gave me on our 40th anniversary. I've tied my hair back and worn a hint of blush. No cardigan this time. No armor. The church doors open at 2 p.m. sharp, and guests trickle in. Some I recognize. Most I don't. But they whisper respectfully when they see me. And a few even nod, like they know. The moment comes. Claire enters the sanctuary in a simple, elegant gown. No veil. No sparkling tiara. Just dignity. And when she walks down the aisle, she pauses. Right next to me. I'm sorry, she whispers. I place my hand over hers and squeeze gently. Walk slow, I whisper back. Let it mean something. And she does. The ceremony is different than I imagined. It's not full of fluff or fake smiles. The pastor speaks plainly. The vows are personal. Eric looks like he's seeing Claire for the first time, really seeing her. And when they say amen, it's not forced. It's real. The guests stand and applaud, but not wildly. Respectfully. And as Claire and Eric walk out, hand in hand, Claire turns. And mouths, thank you. Later, At the modest reception in the church's back hall, Claire finds me sipping cider. "You didn't have to let me use it," she says. "I didn't," I reply. "But you changed." She tilts her head. "Do you think Paul would have liked it?" I smile slowly. "I think Paul would have been proud." That night, I stay behind after everyone leaves. Just like I used to. I walk through the sanctuary, picking up programs, folding chairs. My feet echo on the stone floor. At the altar, I pause. I whisper a prayer. Not for forgiveness. Not this time. But for continuance. That the strength I found, the one that stood tall in silence, might carry forward. That my faith would no longer hide under anyone's eye roll. That even when I'm gone, the things I stood for would still stand. Because some people inherit property. Some inherit money. But me? I inherited resolve. And now? So has Claire. People think the wedding is the end of the story. A final chapter tied with lace and dandelions. But what they don't see, what they never see, is what comes after. The part where real life seeps back in, and people return to being people. It happens the very next week. Claire and Eric are still on their honeymoon, somewhere in Colorado, taking photos of trees and each other. And I'm back at the church, replacing flower arrangements with pine cones and early winterberries. Preparing for Advent. Quietly. Then Ruth calls. She sounds shaken. "Evelyn," she says breathlessly. "Have you seen the news?" No greeting. No context. Just that. I pause. No. Why? It's Claire. The wedding's all over social media. Not the good parts. My stomach turns. What do you mean? There's a clip. Someone recorded a bit during the vows. Then twisted it into something political. Mocking. They're saying the church is forcing people to pray during weddings now. That it's outdated. That Claire of all people, is part of some religious stunt. I feel my chest tighten. I don't understand at first. Not fully. But within an hour I do. The video has spread like fire. Taken out of context. Edited just enough to make the ceremony look like a sermon. Strangers are posting cruel comments. Accusing Claire of selling out. Others mock the church for its archaic setting. One account even says, she got married in a church that probably smells like mothballs and guilt. I sit on the church pew, staring at my phone, stunned. They don't even know her. They certainly don't know me. But the world has decided anyway. 2 days later, Claire calls. Her voice is brittle. They're tagging my photography business, Evelyn. They're leaving reviews even though they've never hired me. One woman said I'd probably bring a Bible to her shoot and preach. I hear the fear underneath her words. "This is going to ruin me," she whispers. "No," I say firmly. "It's not." But the truth is, I'm not sure yet how I'll stop it. I show up at the local town hall that Friday. I'm not there to complain. I'm there to rent a booth. The fall craft fair is coming up, and the church usually has a modest presence: cookies, crocheted bookmarks, maybe a raffle. But this year, I request a larger space. Corner slot. Right by the main doors. When they ask why, I simply smile and say, it's time the church stopped hiding. I work all weekend. Not just organizing pies and hand-knit scarves, but curating stories. I print photos of the church during baptisms, weddings, funerals, choir practices. I dig up photos from the 1960s when the church was first built. I include one of Paul hammering a crossbeam, sawdust in his hair and joy in his eyes. I make a large sign that reads, "A place of peace, not a platform." The day of the craft fair, people walk by slowly. Some stop. Some don't. But by noon, the booth is full of people talking, asking questions, not just about the church but about Claire. "I saw the video," a young woman says softly, "but something didn't feel right about it." "It wasn't," I reply. "That's why I'm here." An older man frowns. "They said your church forces tradition. Is that true?" I meet his eyes. My church welcomes quiet strength. We don't shout over anyone. But we don't back down either. Word spreads. Claire returns from her honeymoon to find the online tide shifting. People are now defending her, saying the church looked peaceful, that the vows felt authentic, that maybe, just maybe, a moment of reverence isn't outdated after all. She calls me in tears. I didn't even know you were doing all that. I chuckle. You didn't need to. That Sunday, Claire walks back into the church. Not to sit and judge. Not to avoid. But to belong. She joins me in the third pew. And when the pastor says, "Let us pray," she doesn't roll her eyes. She bows her head. After service, we walk slowly through the back hall. Sunlight pours through the stained glass and paints the floor with soft pink and amber light. Claire stops near the photo display I never took down from the craft fair. She studies the image of Paul hammering that beam, then one of me years later holding a pie at the bake sale. "You built something," she says softly. "I saved something," I correct. Because sometimes, the world only respects what you defend. Later that week, she posts a letter publicly, on her website, her photography page, and even sends a copy to the local paper. It's not defensive. It's not political. It's honest. She writes, "I got married in a place that once made me uncomfortable. Not because it was wrong, but because it reminded me what I ran from. I thought strength meant rejecting tradition, but I learned it can also mean reclaiming it. I owe that to Evelyn Hollis, a woman who didn't ask me to change, but invited me to understand. And because of that, I found the courage to stand beside her. Not in shame, but in grace." The comments under her post are kind, supportive, surprisingly quiet in their acceptance. It feels like a new beginning. But not just for Claire. For me too. Because for the first time in years, I'm not just seen as the quiet widow who shows up early to polish the pews. Now, I'm the keeper of something solid. A legacy. A reminder. That sometimes, the smallest act of devotion can echo louder than the cruelest voice online. By the next service, we've added a new entry table at the front vestibule. With a sign. Welcome. No judgment. No shouting. Just peace. And Claire? Claire printed that sign herself. Because now, she gets it. You don't have to believe in everything I do. But you do have to respect the ground I stand on. Because I fought to keep it holy. And now? It's hers to protect, too. I sit in the back pew now. I don't need to stand at the front anymore. Claire does that. I watch her at the pulpit, nervous at first, glancing down at her notes, her voice cracking a little at the start. But then she lifts her chin, steadies her breath, and begins to speak like she means it. Faith is not always something you inherit, she says. Sometimes, you grow into it. Sometimes, you fight for it. And sometimes, you're taught what it really means by someone you didn't understand before. She doesn't look at me, not directly. But I feel it. I feel the weight of her words reach for me like an apology shaped as a sermon. I let myself smile. It's been 6 months since the wedding. 6 months since I stood in the foyer of this same church, holding a set of keys in one hand and my own dignity in the other. Back then, Claire barely spoke to me. Her eyes had softened slightly, but her posture was still defensive, guarded. She and Tyler left on their honeymoon without saying goodbye to me. I didn't press it. But I stayed. I cleaned up the church. I met with the community board. I hired a young woman named Aisha to help me organize weekend youth programs. I started a monthly food pantry. People returned. People stayed. They came not because the lights were back on or the stained glass windows sparkled again. They came because love was finally louder than shame here. It took Claire a few weeks to come back. I was standing in the community room, handing out canned goods and fresh bread, when she showed up holding a bag of groceries and looking like she'd aged 5 years in 5 weeks. Life had caught up to her, not in a cruel way, but in a clarifying one. I thought I knew everything, she had whispered to me. I didn't. I didn't say anything. She set the bag down, stayed for an hour, and left. Next week, she came back. The week after that, she stayed longer. Now, she stands on the pulpit. Not as someone pretending to know everything, but as someone finally willing to listen. And speak. I used to think prayer was performative, she says, her voice more confident now. That it was for people who didn't take action. But watching Evelyn rebuild this place, watching her show up even when no one else did. I learned that prayer is a kind of power. It's a power I dismissed because I didn't understand it. But I do now. The room is still. No coughs. No shifting in seats. Even the toddlers in the back nursery seem to sense the sacred hush in the room. Claire clears her throat and finishes. I hope we can all grow in love, not pride. In grace, not ego. And I hope we can be brave enough to circle back to the people we once rolled our eyes at, because they might be the ones who save us. Applause follows. Not loud, but honest. I rise slowly, my joints stiff but my chest lighter than it's been in years. I walk down the side aisle, not wanting attention, but knowing I'll get some anyway. At the front, Claire steps down. She meets me halfway, right at the foot of the altar. For a moment, we don't say anything. Then she reaches into her pocket and pulls out something small, a folded ribbon. It's gold satin. You left this behind in the bridal room, she says, her voice soft. I smile. I thought you threw it away. I almost did, she admits. But then I realized, you weren't trying to make the day about you. You were just trying to bless it. We stand there, two women who once held the same blood but couldn't speak the same language. Now finally we do. Would you like to lead the closing prayer? Claire asks. I blink, surprised. You sure? I'm asking, she says, her hand on my arm. Not as an obligation, but because it would mean something. I nod. I walk up. I face the congregation, my back straight, my heart steady. Lord, I begin, thank you for second chances. And third. And fourth. Thank you for the people who teach us, even when we think we're too old to learn. And thank you for the space to forgive, not just each other, but ourselves. When I open my eyes again, Claire is crying. Quietly. Honestly. We don't hug. We don't need to. Some things settle in the silence, and they stay there, safe, understood. After the service, the kids run through the pews. Someone offers to take pictures of us. Claire declines gently. Not today, she says. Today isn't for show. I walk out into the parking lot, sun warming my shoulders. A few people stop to shake my hand or thank me for the food pantry or the cleanup efforts. I thank them back. And then I see it, a new plaque by the church entrance. I hadn't noticed it before. It's small. Bronze. Simple. It reads, in dedication to Evelyn Porter. For building more than walls, for building hearts. For a long moment, I just breathe. They rolled their eyes when I prayed. Now they bow their heads alongside me. And the church? It still stands. But more than that. So do I.